So, welcome to SET Foundation Program's lecture series, Perspectives and Introduction to the Arts and Sciences, Arts and Social Sciences. So just a quick note, today's lecture has videos, so please keep your cameras off when the videos are being played. You can keep them on when the videos are not being played, banned with issues and all that. All right. So for the fourth lecture in this series, we have with us Joshua Muiva. Joshua is a poet, performer, and freelance journalist. He will have a collection of poems published in 2021. You must ask him all about that at the end. He does all sorts of performances, poetry, and video installations. And about today, he said that whatever happens is a part of the performance, which is very intriguing. Okay, so as always, put your questions in the chat box and we'll take them up at the end. Joshua, this is very amazing. Welcome to CFP. All yours now.
Hi, thanks. Hi, everybody. It's thank you for coming, for logging on from wherever you are. I'm a writer, so I mostly wrote down most of what I want to say. So if you occasionally see my eyes going down, please bear with me. I'm going to show you Wisława Szymborska, who's this Polish poet, essayist, and translator who won the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1996. It's called Poetry Reading by Wisława Szymborska. To be a boxer or to not be there at all? O muse, where are the teeming crowds? 12 people in the room, 8 seats to spare. It's time to start this cultural affair. Half came inside because it started raining. The rest are relatives. O muse, the women here would love to rant and rave, but that's for boxing. Here they must behave. Dante's Inferno is ringside nowadays, likewise his Paradise, O muse. Or not to be a boxer, but a poet, one sentenced to hard shelling for life, for lack of muscles, forced to show the world the sonnet that may make the high school reading lists with luck, O muse, or bob-tailed Pegasus. In the first row, a sweet old man snow. He dreams his wife's alive again. What's more, she's making him that tart she used to bake, a flame. But careful, don't burn his cake. We start to read or muse. I don't know if you understood the poem, but the really fun part about this poem is that she says that no one basically comes to a poetry reading. And if I look down at the participants, I see 164 people who attended something hosted by a poet. So I'm hoping you're getting some credit for this in your academic course. Because she says that if there are 12 seats, there'll be 8 to spare. And since poetry is no boxing match with a thronging audience, I found myself seeking other ways besides publishing to show it off. I've been writing poetry since I was 16, first simply as a means of expression, then eventually at some point a fondness, fascination with language, and the worlds that words can build has taken over. And also the fact that I want everyone to know I figured a little bit of the bigger puzzle. It's still an expression, but it's motivated by other things other than simply a need to express. The expression series of poems were needed. They were necessary to pin down the kinds of bodies I desired. So there was a lot of thundering thighs, jumblum lips, and sweaty nights. And over time, I'd been able to fill those bodies with other things to move on to other forms of storytelling and myth building, a showing rather than a telling. One of my first attempts at merging my own need of expressing a feeling with other trajectories of that expression was the catalog. 9 poems on the poet and the photographer. A series of poems that I wrote to catalog the breakup between myself, a poet, and my partner, a photographer, in the year 2011. Alongside with mining our own relationship with the poetry, I find myself looking to other sources of text, inspiration that has eventually slipped into the poetic text. I found myself scribbling down lines from the American poet Anne Carson, reading Roland Barthes' philosophical contemplations on the relationship between image and text, gave grounding and foundation to the propositions in the poetry. and even British naturalist David Attenborough, narrating the movement of a swarm of locusts in the grasslands of Africa, found itself into the work. There is a physicality, isolation, and exhaustion to reading, writing, and rewriting poetry that isn't ever accounted for. I'd spent over 6 months writing the first draft of the work, sequestered in my room, both mourning the relationship and regurgitating, reconfiguring, and remaking it into this work, the catalogue. At this time, there was an Argentinian filmmaker, Nicolas Grandi, living in Bangalore, who was experimenting with poetry and video to create something he called video poems. I wanted to move, break out of the static of the writing, and this exploration seemed like the perfect excuse to combine this desire and my short career as a movement artist, years of being a dance writer, and breaking down choreography with choreographers to understand dance, and a budding interest in making videos. Thus, the work Snarky Baudelaire, based on the first poem of the catalogue, began. So I'll just show you the work, and I'll show you a few minutes of the work with sound, and then I will mute the sound for it.
From this moment on. And now I am just free. 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 And now I am just free from this moment on. And now I am just free. I am just free. And now I am just free. And now I am just
I wanted to take a padam, a short nritya, pure dance, and natya, narrative from the Bharatanatyam repertoire to express these feelings of the work. And then I strung together movement, mine from the words and emotions in the poem. I am not a trained dancer, so I turned to theoretical knowledge to make the movements, piece them together, and show them. Leaning on the structure and similar emotional content of the padam, but twisting it the same with the stories, words, and language in my poems. Telling Stories, Telling Lies was my next poetry work. I'll just show you some more of this, maybe with some sound, and then I will stop.
Bước xuống ruộng sâu mang sầu em cách giá, tay ôm bó mã nước mắt hai hàng. Ai làm lỡ chuyến đò ngang, cho sông cạn nước.
Okay, Jesus! We're gonna take it from the
Sorry, 1 second. I'm just going to go to my presentation. So that was catalog, the 9 poems in the Poet and the Photographer that I made into snarky Baudelaire sort of video. I used one of the first poem in the series to make this video. The next series I wrote was Telling Stories, Telling Lies. I'm just showing you the poem as well, and you can see it. In this 38 poem series, I want to take this rush of meeting my Delhi-based partner over one night and talking all night and the desire to extend it into words. Again, for structure and for frills, I look towards the 1001 Nights, the Arabian Nights, but not for content. Instead, I attempted to people my own stories with those fantastical elements. Something else that has happened in the writing of these poems was I lost my laptop and had borrowed a friend's laptop till I could afford to buy another one. The trouble was this borrowed laptop, the space bar didn't work, but I was desperate to write this work. So I would write everything clumped together, and then after I was done writing a poem, I would press down really hard on the space bar between the sentences and so on. At times, the lines would jump much more than a single space, and it was way too much effort to correct it. So I let them be. And then I actually liked the visualness of it. It felt like pauses, like granting permission to wander away from the work for a moment. So if you see the PPT presentation, you can see the gaps in the poem, and those sort of happened by mistake because of this space bar issue that I had. But then I quite enjoyed what it did to the poems per se. And so then I just kept them. The idea with this series was to make a book. And so I wanted to echo the idea of moving around through these imaginary cityscapes and spaces of the city that I had created in this work. And photography or image making seemed to be the best way to do it, to translate this idea. So along with the photographer Corp Shiva, we went around the city of Bangalore and found places that correspond to similar locations in the poems or hinted at the imagery or prompts from popular fairy tales. So here's this, I like this cow thing because I think it sort of reminds me of the Jack and the Beanstalk moment. This pumpkin, of course, is iconic in fairy tales. And then this is just a part of a city that I sort of liked. And yeah, so what I did with this was that it stewed for a while. So I'll come back to this. So then, okay, so let's come to this now. All of my work has been grounded in the poetic text, and I wanted to try something else, and collaborating with video artist and filmmaker Ashok Vish was the perfect opportunity. For the 2019 edition of The Gender Bender, a joint project of Sandbox Collective and Goethe Institute Bangalore, we presented Camp Notes on Bangalore. In this work, we borrowed gestures from campy men in the city to create how-to videos influenced by the aesthetic of the iconic exercise videos from the 80s. Think Jane Fonda. We simply intended to pay homage and honor these gestures, but also remind ourselves that the underpinnings of camp is don't take yourself too seriously. So we took these like clothes also. So this idea of like just the heels, the high top socks, the really short shorts. I'm going to show you a bit of the work now. And this is just a test. It's not very well edited. So, yeah. And then I'll show you how we showed it. This is best done in a pair of high heels. You want to touch heaven. Just get a good stretch of your thigh muscles. Go from boring to Beyonce. I'm Joshua, and here is the best way to touch that ass to the ground mopped from Alex Victor. Assume the starting position. Stand in attention with your arms at your side. Now put your hands on your hips. You're a little teapot. In one smooth action, bend your left knee, stick out your right arm, and grab that elbow with your left hand. Drop your right wrist. That's your spout. Now repeat the same action on the opposite side. Drop your hands to your shoulder. Make your way down to your knees. Grab at your body like you are looking for your spectacles in the dark. Spread your knees and drop your butt. Close your knees and come up like you are a snake. Put your hands on your hips again. Now do the Naomi Campbell walk. One second, sorry. Yeah, and then we showed it on these 8 screens, as you can see, these old television screens, and we showed them on loop, and videos played with different gestures that we'd broken down into these how-to exercises. And if you see, there was like sort of a glitchy thing that happened through the video. We wanted to like sort of hark back to this idea of VHS tapes and these overused VHS tapes and how they would break down. I'm sure none of you have heard of what a VHS tape is, but yeah, that's what we wanted to do. And yeah, and so you could, and then the work would jump from, each video would jump from each screen at a different time. It was sort of timed. And yeah, this is what you could see. Work sits inside of me for a long time, constantly brewing. So for Come Lie With Me, a durational poetry performance that I made within the framework of 5 million incidents, realized by Goethe Institute and Max Miller Bhavan in collaboration with Rux Media Collective. So for the foundational text, I reached back to 2015 to the series of poems, Telling Stories, Telling Lies. Since the idea had come from telling a lover's stories of my life in bed, so in seeking to perform it in this, to return, replicate, and resonate with that same, except that each member of the audience was invited to be my lover over the 5 hours per day over 5 nights. So I created 2 rooms. I don't have photos of this because I didn't want to document it in a particular kind of way because it's supposed to be a surprise. But I created 2 rooms, one room, an exact copy of my Bangalore bedroom. I'd couriered objects and materials from my room in Bangalore to Delhi. And the other was a waiting room where I played a playlist of only Black women singers. At one time, one at a time, the audience would enter the bedroom from the waiting room, be invited to lie with me, pick a number between 1 and 38. And I would read them the corresponding poem. And then they could lie there as long as they wanted, ask me questions, sit, chat, or sit in silence. They were never asked to leave. So that's the work that I did earlier in 2020 in January, though I applied for it in 2019. In the middle of the lockdown, out of sheer desperation, I wanted to make something. So I married my love for photography, poetry, plus video making to start creating the next body of work. These are 12 poems in all of his. So for the photos, I kind of made rules. I can only using a selfie camera. And also you must remember this was made in lockdown and quarantine, so I didn't have anyone else to collaborate with. So I basically used myself and things that I had around me. So I can only shoot the images using the selfie camera of my phone. It must include the body part mentioned and a pink flower that was made by my friend. I then choreograph movements that were symbolic of certain emotions from the poem. Like in this instance that I'm going to show you, you will see gobbling, eating, tasting, chewing. Then I projected the photo, used it as a backdrop to make these movements, and shot the video. All his moving parts. Mouth. Imagine we could go back in time to when to truly know something, we had to put it in our mouths. Your mouth is late February. It is a cherry, sweet on first nip, and then it only gets sweeter till drifting is inevitable. Your mouth is sometimes December, bitter winter, the kind of winter that East European men will declare mild while you are shivering. Your mouth is sometimes uninviting, unlike these men who are willing to taste everything once. My sweat, charms, lots of hash from Morocco, the hot chili sauce from Walk and Go, and beer in every form. Imagine we could go back. The warning that everything on the red coat aisle is inedible and tasteless holds true for everything and everyone that is not exported or holidaying. Though I realized I had come back home on tasting my grandmother's ground chili chutney. The mouth is the library. My first lover, he tasted of synthol behind the ears and like Axe body spray near his armpits and pubes. My grandmother's chutneys are always generous on chili, my grandfather's food on the garlic. My best friend puts generous amounts of tomato in all his food. My flatmate likes lime. But all this you already know. Your mouth, on the other hand, isn't so excited by spice, not interested in the juicy, the overwhelming, the fleshy, the violent. So much these orifices register. So much your orifices register. So much my orifices register. All his moving parts. Sorry, as you can see, I'm terrible at technology. It's not my favorite thing. So then I wrote these series of poems called, and then later in the lockdown, I keep, as you can see that I keep returning to meet certain mediums and redoing things the way I want to use them. So like over 5 years later, this fascination with gaps made by a faulty keyboard kind of returned and found itself being used purposefully but differently in this new series I wrote last year, History of Blame, 21 Love Poems. So I wrote this series, which I guess since I'm a poet, maybe I should read to you. So I'll read this to you. The suit and boots tell us crisis equal opportunity. I would have whispered the next few lines to you alone, might have nibbled at your earlobe, greedily stolen a kiss from your orange lips. But now, poets think so too. Heartburn equal poem, horny equal poem, handsome equal poem. There's nothing that can't be put down in words. I must truly believe this for it to be truly. I have to keep reminding myself poems are addressed to you. Noun, address, origin, Old French. The particulars of the place where someone lives or an organization is situated. Two, a formal speech delivered to an audience. Verb, address, origin, Old French. Write the name and address of the intended recipient. Speak to a person or an assembly. Why did I even start writing? It was always to fix the lover. It was fun if there was wrestling, writhing, and worrying, but I prefer it without those stoppings too. You know what really makes a lover? No, it isn't just that you love him. No, it isn't that just that he might love you. No, it isn't just that everybody thinks you love each other. It's that he knows that place of your pain, and you know what he does? He makes sure to hit that spot every time. A lover gives everything a sight. He pinpoints the location. Yes, it hurts here. You've come to the right place, my love. So that was something that I wrote. And for my last work in this talk, I want to show you art be thirsty, artists must be thirst trapped. The title is borrowed from Art Must Be Beautiful, Art Must Be Beautiful, Artists Must Be Beautiful by Marina Abramovic, performed in Copenhagen in Denmark, where she combs her hair with one brush and a comb, and violently till she's sort of bleeding. And it's this commentary on like hair and beauty and things like that. So I wanted to sort of twist it around, and I was commissioned to do something around the prompts of porno, erotic, and somatic. I didn't want to just submit poems, but wanted to do something graphic. So I tried something new, and here it is. So this is the line from Makbul, and it has Tabu, and she says this line, which I think is quite one of the most erotic lines in Hindi cinema. She says, "Kyun miya aajkal aapko, aajkal tujhe pyas nahi lagti miya," which is like, you don't feel thirsty nowadays, my love. And this was from a song, and I quite like this idea of like this, the way that love is like, why must I feel like that? Why must I chase the cat? It's nothing but the dog in me. This idea that we fall in love because it's the dog in us. And this is sort of like a image called the dog catcher that I end the work with. While I look at my body of work so far, it seems that I dabble across different mediums, but for me, all of this work comes from the poetry and working on the poetry. The rest of it is exciting, pushes me, and feeds back into the poetry. But it's like making a boxing match and inviting everyone. Eventually, I hope that people find the poetry. Thank you. And I'll open myself up to questions.
Thanks, Joshua. We can put our cameras on if you want, since the presentation is done. So Joshua,
yes, please, at least some people turn on your cameras. I feel like I've been talking to myself and my backdrop till now. So, sorry. Yeah. Okay, and if you have any questions.
Ma'am, I think you've disabled the camera.
No, it's enabled.
Yeah, it's enabled because I see a lot of people turning their cameras on. So the
Yeah.
cameras are fine.
Ma'am, but it says for me specifically, I cannot open my camera.
Dhruvika, maybe like. Anyway, we'll try and sort it out. If not, okay, here you are. You had a question, Vinay, so if you want to ask, please go ahead. You can ask Joshua the question.
Ma'am, I've put in the chat box.
Okay, so you want me to read it? Okay. Joshua, so Vinay wants to know, how did poetry become your passion? Is there any connection to childhood hobbies or events, or did you discover it much later?
I don't like this word passion, I must admit. It feels very corporate speak, or at least it's been taken away in our time to mean corporate speak. You're like, you have to be passionate at your architecture job. So yeah, so I'm not so fond of that term. But I mean, I discovered poetry, like I said, it was this really desperate attempt to sort of, I was queer, I was falling in love with men, I was reading things around me, and so I found myself forced to sort of write those men into my work. And like I said, so initially they were these bodies, and I was desperate to describe them. So like all my men had like thundering thighs, or like things that you have to climb like coconut trees, or things like that. And eventually they sort of have distilled into other things. Any connection to childhood hobbies or events? No, it was really like a discovery of the fact that I was queer and different. I think if I'd found like something that's like, I also wanted to be a dancer, so I used to go for Bharatanatyam classes when I was a child, but I mean, it didn't stick after a point. Yeah, but I mean, it has stayed now. Like I started writing at 16, and I think I started taking it more seriously when I was in my early 20s, around when I was 20, 21. And I think it has stuck around or become interesting still, or stayed interesting still, because it's like a project. Like I'm interested in dissecting the relationship between a lover and the beloved and things like that, and those concepts. And so I'm excited by those concepts generally. So yeah. So that's why I continue to to be excited by it and discover it and talk about it and those sort of things. Is there another question?
Oh yeah, there are a few questions. So Dainty wants to know, how do you go about selecting one image as the cover of the poem after taking hundreds of them?
Oh, you don't. What I'm showing you is essentially something that I finally edited down to. And how did I come to that is, so to make the images I work with a photographer. So it's a lot of conversation, a lot of delicate manipulating and delicate arguing and delicate negotiations to sort of get the image you finally want. But I mean, you eventually, like, I know what I want to, I most times know what kind of image I want. For example, that cow image was just serendipitous. Like, we were shooting on the street, like there's an image of that same photo without a cow, and we were shooting on the street and this cow just walked by, and the next door house on the street that we were shooting at sort of feeds this cow every day. So they were actually just feeding the cow and it was standing there. So we just took the opportunity to take that photo. So it isn't like it's all, sometimes it's serendipitous, you have a plan, but sometimes it's also things that just sort of work together. Yeah, there's another question. Do you want to read that, Tanya? Yeah. From the same person, right?
Yes. So some part of this question you've already answered. What are the processes like? She also wants to know, how time consuming is it, and does it take more time than writing the actual poem?
Making all this work actually takes more time because it involves, like, for example, to shoot the photos took us like there are, I think, 15 images we shot from Telling Stories, Telling Lies for the 38 poems. And they're sort of going to be act like interleaves or pauses in the book. And so so to shoot that took us around like 2 weeks, because 2-3 weeks, because it's also because we sort of knew the images and I know the photographer. So actually 2-3 weeks is a short time, and I took much longer to write the poems for sure. But it isn't, but it's not like I come to the extension part of the work as along with the poetry. So it's not so I don't have a sense of that time, but it's consuming in terms of, like, for example, if you think about Come Lie With Me, I wrote Telling Stories and Telling Lies in 2014, 2015. And I did this performative work, which I have been thinking about for a long time and brewing and thinking to do it in Delhi. So yeah, so that's in the case of Telling Stories, Telling Lies, the performance aspect of it took much longer than the writing the poem aspect of it. Yeah.
Okay, there are two other questions, but there's an interesting one, I think. Janvi asks, the way you've used words and motion to express yourself is inspiring. What led you to link the two?
I have an interesting trajectory. I started writing for a dance. I was 15, 16, I used to write their sort of, their brochure material. So it would have a paragraph describing the dance, describing the sort of movement vocabulary they'd borrowed. So in order to do this, I sometimes had to sit in on the performance, and I got to talk to the choreographers to break down these things. So then I sort of figured that, and if you look at Bharatanatyam dance, which I'm really fascinated, interested by still, it is word to motion, right? Like the action of something. Like if someone says flower, they show you the mudra of flower. It isn't just outside of that. So I like that sort of easiness of it. And then it's like you train people to read it. So now, for example, if you know how to read one Bharatanatyam gesture, if you see it in like 100 pieces, you know it means flower, or it means that in that way, or it means flower when it's being done like this. So you learn how to read things. So then I like that easiness of it. And I've constantly, like, I feel like I'm some, desperate, jaded classical dancer who didn't get to have a classical dance dream or something. And so, I mean, in that way, I'm completely fascinated by the structure of the work, even if I don't like know any of the intricate dance techniques. I mean, I like the structure of how a classical item is broken in dance, and so that's what led me to wanting to combine these two things together.
Okay, so here we have, sides of the coins question. So one is, what attracted you to present your poetry in camp fashion when you could have chosen any other style? And how do you deal with people who judge you because you're queer?
Okay. Camp fashion was basically, I mean, it's something that's always excited me. I mean, I'm campy. I'm a femme person. Femme represent. I like wearing clothes in fascinating ways. Even if I'm wearing a pant and shirt, it's not just a pant and shirt. I will do something to that pant and shirt. So, I mean, that doesn't change in my everyday, and so therefore it has like my work as well, I guess. We'd made that work in 2019 at the same time that the Met Gala, this is the biggest fashion event of the year in May or something, had happened. And they'd had this thing called Camp Notes on Fashion. So it's a play on that idea as well. So we were like, we didn't think that was campy enough actually, because camp is so much more funnier and, things like that. And also hints at some sort of like pain or some sort of leaving out or some sort of like a window to expression kind of thing. And so that's why we chose it. And yeah, how do you deal with people judge you? I really like what RuPaul says. And RuPaul says that if no one is paying your bills, pay them no mind. So so unless someone is producing my work and the producing of the work, my queerness comes in the way of that work being produced, then I might have a problem. But generally, I don't really care. And it's literally because they're not paying my bills. I mean, I'm still paying my own bills and things like that. So then it doesn't matter. So, yeah.
Okay, so I think, Joshua, we have time for one more question and then we can end this. Okay. So here's a question everybody asks writers. What inspires you the most to write, and what was your first poem about, and what inspired you to write that?
I'm deep by relationships. Like I like dissecting. I mean, I'm not interested in too much in being in a relationship per se, but I'm deeply interested in relationships. So I like how relationships work, and so most of my poems are about dynamics of two people or friends trying to create something. And yeah, like if you saw the Lovers poem, or you saw the other one that I read, or if you've heard the Mouth one, it's all about the dynamic between like a relationship between me and a person, me and a place, me and a food item. So I'm deeply interested in relationships and how we value those things and what sort of values and judgments we put on this. What was your first poem about? I'm sure to be cliched and as cliched as possible, I'm sure I wrote about some heartbreak or something exciting like that, but yeah. And what inspired you to write it? A heartbreak. But yeah, I think that's what I wrote about. But yeah, but I'm deeply, like I said, I'm deeply interested in relationships and how those things either come together, break down, or stay together. So that's what interests me.
Okay, I think that's all the time we have for today. So, Joshua, I don't know how, but you've taken us from heartbreak to camp, back to heartbreak, and it was all very wonderful to see and watch you. Thank you so much. Also, thank you to our Dean Samir Shah, our Program Chair Kathy, and the CFP team for the support. Thanks also to the CEPT IT desk and Dhrovika. And thank you guys, as always, great questions, great audience. Good evening. Bye.
And thank you for the invitation. And yes, I'd love to come to your campus. Please invite me, organize it. I'll be there. I'm most excited. Thanks. Okay.
Okay,
bye-bye.
so there are so many yeses here, Joshua. It's just if you see the chat box, it's just yes, 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 yes.
Yeah. Cool. Great. Yeah, I'd love to come and be part of something at your college. It'll be fun. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
See you
guys.
soon.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye. All
Bye.
right. The host will end the meeting now.